And welcome into the Upside Sports Network my name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us for the MLB Hot Stove Daily. Anyway, lots of news around Major League Baseball, plenty to get into. We'll start with the Mets and Padres rumors. We saw over the last week or so plenty of rumors coming out of San Diego about something big possibly happening there. Ultimately, it wasn't Fernando Tatis that was out there in the rumors. Wasn't Manny Machado, not Xander Bogaerts. But it turns out the guy they just acquired at the deadline last year, Mason Miller, could find his way to New York this offseason. Let us know what you think of the trade possibility there, the fit, all those kinds of things, the fallout of Edwin Diaz leaving and going to the Dodgers, this possibly being one of the dominoes that could go back to New York to kind of help fill that void. This would be a very nice pivot for them. That's not the only thing that's happened around Major League Baseball today. We had several different headlines. Mets making a few of those headlines today. Bringing in Jorge Polanco, 2-year, $40 million deal. Not exactly the type of move I would have made if I was the New York Mets. I wonder if this move ultimately takes them out of the running for Murakami, if this is kind of a cheaper option for them, kind of a shorter-term deal. Polanco had a great year last year at the Mariners, no doubt about it. But is he really worth $40 million, even if it is for 2 years of control? I have my doubts. We also see plenty of rumors right now surrounding Brendan Donovan from the St. Louis Cardinals. Cardinals also came to a deal today with starting pitcher Dustin May. We'll see if he can rebound his career there on a one-year deal with I believe, a club option or a mutual option anyway for 2027. So we'll be curious to see how he performs in 26 with the Cardinals. But Brendan Donovan would be a huge add. Mariners are said to be one of the favorites there. I believe the Giants were the other team that was in the hunt there as well. Several other teams have checked in on his services. Plenty to get into, and let's start and get right into it. And we'll begin today with those rumors from the San Diego Padres involving Mason Miller. The New York Mets absolutely are the team that has been targeting him. Seems like that could be a trade that we actually see come to fruition. Now, I'm going to say pump the brakes a little bit here. There's a lot of due diligence that's going to happen between both sides of this thing. We're looking at Nick Pivetta also being in those rumors, going to New York, possibly filling in that number 2 starter role there. I think that's a little rich for how good of a pitcher he is. I think he's more of a number 3. I think 2 is a little bit elevating there. So we'll see if that's really the option they decide to go with as that number 2 starter in that rotation. But that's not the only name. There's also Ramon Laureano as well. The Padres and Mets are actually a very good match for each other. They both have different pieces that could be really nice fits. If you're wondering what could possibly go back the other way, well, it sounds like Jonah Tong is the name the Padres would like back in return. I'd imagine Tong would probably break the opening day rotation with the San Diego Padres if he was included in that deal going back the other way. But you look at what they just gave up to bring in Mason Miller, certainly some of their best prospects, some of the best prospects in the game. It's certainly going to cost a pretty penny to bring him in. Absolutely have him for one less pennant race anyway than you would have if you had made the trade for him at the deadline. But still a very curious move for both sides. As far as other moves that really need to be discussed here, I want to start with the St. Louis Cardinals. Let me pop up my screen for you guys. Bear with me for just a second here. And that's not the one I'm looking for. That's not the one I'm looking for. And that's not the one I'm looking for either. Where did that one go? Let's see if they have it on this page here. Luis Robert found his name in the rumor mill again. I think it was further down on the other page I was looking at. Anyway, back to the point. The Mariners were one of the teams that were said to be one of the favorites for Brendan Donovan's services. I found that move, or that headline, kind of interesting there. I thought they were comfortable with the young pieces they had that they were going to be utilizing this year. The money around Josh Naylor that they did spend already, I was curious to see how much money they'd really have to really add this offseason. Now, Brendan Donovan doesn't necessarily have a huge contract. In fact, let's go ahead and pull up what his actual value is on baseball trade values for you guys really quick, just so you guys can kind of see what his value is. His value currently, according to baseball trade values, with 2 years left to control, he's only going to be making about 13.5. This is certainly a palatable salary here for the Mariners to take on. Now, the ask from the Cardinals is several prospects in return. They're not necessarily looking for your gem of a prospect, and that's it. They want to have a couple of different guys that they can hope on and build upon. So if we're looking at the Mariners organization, I think this is probably the team that gets the deal done out of all the different options that are out there. The Mariners just certainly have the prospects to get it done. Several top 100 guys, and then they certainly have a deep farm system. They just demonstrated the depth of this farm system by trading away one of the better catching prospects in the game, Henry Ford, to the Nationals to bring in a reliever. Emerson is one of the top prospects in the game. Anderson, Montez, Sloan, Arroyo, Formello. Not sure how to pronounce this for the last name anyway, but I'm just going to say Gerangelo, and then Celestin as well. The top 8 here would immediately go probably into any team's top 5. This is a really deep farm system, and you look at the ages of these guys. all of them between 19 and 22. Certainly would fit the timeline for the Cardinals, would certainly be nice additions to this roster. If we were trying to build a trade between them and the Mariners, I think this is a trade that could come together fairly quickly as long as the Mariners are willing to part with the names that we just mentioned. So if you're getting a Brendan Donovan, you're getting him for 2 years, hopefully you can extend him long term, absolutely has got to be the hope. But what would you have to give up if you're the Mariners? His value currently 32 with 2 years of control. Keep those numbers in mind. Emerson, I think it's a little bit rich for him, but I do think you get a couple of different options here. I think Montez, if you're looking for an outfielder, probably be the guy you'd want to bring in. If you're looking for an infielder, Ty Pete, Arroyo makes some sense here as well as kind of the headliner of the package. I would probably be looking more at Celestin and Sloan to kind of help out in that rotation. Sloan, if I think would be a nice option for them, and then of course Durangelo as well. I'm going to go ahead and say they go after Celestin as the headliner of this package and Sloan as the starter. There's Frere they just brought in for Henry Ford. You look at the deal so far, we're up to 33.8. This deal probably would get done right now. I'm not sure if the Cardinals say yes to this one. I wonder if they would want one more piece in return, but this certainly would get the ball rolling if you're the Seattle Mariners. I think this would certainly get your foot in the door, and I think you'd probably get the last right of refusal in a trade because of how deep your farm system is. Meaning, like if the Giants ended up coming through with an offer that beat out the Mariners' offer, I think the Cardinals would then circle back to the Mariners one last time to see if they could get one or two other pieces that they really like and say, hey, we're going to give them to the Giants if you don't do this. I think that's something we could ultimately see here. All right, got about 51 of you guys, 55 of you guys with us right now. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe. We're really spiking in viewers right now. Really do appreciate you guys joining us late on a Saturday evening. Decided to wait until after John Cena's last match. Watch that with the missus anyway. Very emotional for a lot of the younger fans of the WWE, kind of middle-aged fans as well. And just kind of an end of an era. And was it a good match? I enjoyed it. Did I think it ended the way that I expected it to? Honestly, yes. But that's kind of what we wanted to wait for as well. Tournament is going on, the NBA Cup. We saw the New York Knicks took care of business against the Orlando Magic. And a good game right now between the Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll see if they can snap their 16-game win streak, I believe. But we shall see. And Wemby is back in that game as well. All right, big games tomorrow in the NFL. I'm going to spend some time with the folks, have some fun, watch the Cowboys and Vikings game. As you guys know, I am a Vikings and Cowboys fan, so just, the northern or the South Dakota kid in me and the, Cowboys fan in me is going to have a nice day either way. But should be fun watching with my dad, who's a huge Vikings fan. All right, let's get back into some baseball, some other headlines around Major League Baseball, and then we'll get into some of the chat out there as well. Dodgers have discussed Tyler Glasnow in trade talks. We've discussed this one before. We talked about it last night in conjunction with Tarik Skubal. I watched Buster Olney when he was on a podcast, I believe, for Just Baseball, and he was basically talking about how it's actually feasible that they would trade Tarik Skubal. Now, he's of the belief that they're not necessarily even going to contemplate the idea of signing him in free agency. And I gather from the way he was phrasing things that it's because of his agent and that he's going to try to get the biggest dollar and the Tigers aren't going to stick around and wait for that. And if they lose him for nothing in free agency aside from a comp pick, they aren't really comfortable with that. So that would mean they're going to be leaning towards, adding some years of control from younger players. The way Buster Olney put it is you get 1 year of Tarik Skubal versus likely 18 years of control from 3 different players that you could get in a trade for him. All of that makes great sense, but I think he's completely discounting the fact that the Tigers could very well retain Tarik Skubal. Now, you look at the deals that they did get done today. We'll pop up this one for you right now. Tigers bring in Kenley Jansen, $11 million. I believe he's got a club option. Yes, he does, for $27 as well. Let me get rid of that real quick as it pops up. But I like this deal for the Tigers. Another closer, another arm with closing experience anyway. They brought back Finnegan. They have Vest still back there. Kenley Jansen. Are any of these guys truly elite to me? No. But I do think the Tigers are at least giving themselves plenty of options if and when their closer does fail. They have somebody that they can turn to. So we'll see how things go. But for the Tigers, I like what they've done so far in the bullpen. Now, of course, they said they're not necessarily going to wait around for Alex Bregman to sign this year. They're kind of a little cooler on his prospects of joining the Tigers this year than they were last. But do not rule out the Tigers from adding other pieces to this team. Now, what is this signing? How does it relate to Tarik Skubal for Kenley Jansen? Well, it's got 1 year. If Tarik Skubal does decide to leave in free agency, or if another team overwhelms them with the trade offer, they're not tied to Kenley Jansen for a long-term deal. You weren't going to do that anyway. He's an older pitcher. He's trying to reach that 500 save mark. As far as Kyle Finnegan, at least it gives him another option, 2-year deal. If you have a good year, 1 year, bullpen guys, like we've talked about in years past, are notoriously mercurial. 1 year they'll be terrible with a 5.5 ERA. The next they'll have a sub-2 ERA with 11 strikeouts per 9. The next year they'll go back to a mid-4 ERA. It's just the way bullpens usually work. Dodgers fans are hoping for that or better results anyway from Tanner Scott using that exact same logic. They may not be willing to wait around there. So we'll see if the Dodgers decide to do something in the back end of their bullpen outside of bringing in Edwin Diaz. I would not be surprised if they added multiple relievers and jettisoned Scott and others from that bullpen. But as far as Tarik Skubal goes, I get the math, 1 year of control versus 18 years of control like Buster Olney was saying. But I just think this team is ready to win on the American League side when it's wide open like this. I don't see the impetus to trade him. I think the time to trade him was probably 2 years ago, before you got into this win curve. Then you could have had some nice pieces already building up with this group, and you might be right where you are right now if you decide to make that move then. Unfortunately for them, they decided to wait until his final year, and so his value is going to be a little bit diminished. You're not going to get a true return of what it should be for a 2-time back-to-back winner of the American League Cy Young Award. And even though you might still get 3 nice prospects out of it, it's certainly not the Godfather offer that they could have gotten if they had traded him when they should have. But at this time, if I'm the Tigers, I ride this thing out. I don't see a reason why to make the move right now when you're still trying to win. And it's a very winnable American League right now. Sure, the Dodgers are by far the evil empire in Major League Baseball right now. But half the battle is just getting to the series, and I think the Tigers have done a really nice job putting their best foot forward in building a really nice roster. But we shall see. I do like the additions, like we talked about in the bullpen. Do they still need have more work to do? Absolutely. Are they a better team than the Dodgers on paper? No. Are they a better team than the Phillies on paper? No. If the Braves add another starting pitcher and a shortstop, are they a better team on paper? They are as well. Several teams on the National League side are better on paper than the Tigers. But guess what? You don't have to face any of them until you get to the World Series. On the American League side, their best competition is going to be in the American League East, in my opinion. The Blue Jays just got there. They look really good, and they invested in their team heavily this winter already. You look at a team like the New York Yankees, certainly they've lost some pieces here, but they're not going to sit around idly by. They finally make their first real move of the offseason, bringing back Ahmed Rosario on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal to platoon over there at third base with Ryan McMahon. Really like that signing. He was good for them when they first acquired him. We'll see how things work out in year 2, I guess you would call it now, with the New York Yankees. But the Yankees certainly are going to feel the loss of Bellinger. They're going to feel the loss of Goldschmidt if they don't bring those guys back, and if they don't replace them in the lineup with guys like Murakami or Tucker. So keep your eyes peeled on the Yankees. But my point is, there's plenty of opportunity on the American League side, and I don't see the impetus to move Tarik Skubal at this point. While you still may get some nice prospects out of it, the time to move him was 2 years ago. You committed to try to win with Tarik Skubal. See it through. Don't sit there and wait for this thing to kind of go by. So I think this is a really nice opportunity for the Tigers to try to add this offseason. They've done a nice job building up that bullpen a little bit. Let's see if they finish this thing off. If they're struggling around the trade deadline, they could get a very similar package to what they could get right now. I see no reason to make the move right now, at least in the winter. Or if you think that he's going to leave you in free agency, at some point around the trade deadline, if you get a better offer on the table, by all means, discuss things then at that point. But right now, I don't see the impetus to make the move. If you thought this is the right time to make the move, you should have thought that 2 years ago, before he won these Cy Youngs, when he still had incredible value in a trade, even more so than he does right now. Even off of back-to-back Cy Young awards, and those 2 years of control are now gone, his value is actually lower than it would have been without the Cy Youngs with 2 more years of control, because you still thought he had that ability in him. Tarik Skubal's a great pitcher, but I just think the Tigers they cast their die when they decided to hold on to him at that point, and just got to see it through right now. I think there's the one time I would say that this doesn't necessarily correlate with, and kind of goes against what I advocated for at the end of the Shohei Ohtani era, was that they should have made that move years in advance. But they should have still made the move even at the trade deadline in the final year. They still should have done that move at the winter meetings the final year before his deal expired. They still should have done a move at the trade deadline the year and a half before he finally left in free agency. The writing was on the wall. They were not winning out there in Los Angeles, and so they decided to try to dam the torpedoes and try to go full steam ahead and try to force the issue in his final year there. They decided to buy instead of sell at the deadline. That was a mistake. We talked about it. But that's a very different situation. The American League was not nearly as wide open back then. They were probably at best, even with Ohtani, considered the best player in the game at that time, and Mike Trout, who still had a little bit of ability left before injuries really ransacked what was left of his ability at the plate. That team was going nowhere fast, and they had the teams in front of them looking at the Astros were in front of them. The Yankees were better than them. The Blue Jays at that time were still better than them. With the first time the Blue Jays group came together, the Guardians were also better than them. The Angels had no claim to say, hey, we can make it to the series. The difference here is that the Tigers can make that claim. They can get to the series. They have a shot to win the World Series, and I think they should not pass up on that opportunity. They're not going to come around every single day. All right, let's try to catch up on a few of these comments, and then we'll go through the rest of the headlines here. Got several comments in here. Welcome in, Morgan. You were the first one in here today. Appreciate you joining us this evening. JG, welcome back. Roy Estrada, welcome back. Did anyone else hear the Yankees made Tucker an offer? Is it true or BS? They will make an offer. I did not see any numbers or anything along those lines. But I will say Tucker's taking meetings with teams over the next week and a half. I would expect him to sign a deal before Christmas. I don't think it'll take past New Year's for certain. But Tucker's going to kind of set the market. And then I think you're going to get names like Bellinger coming off the board and Bo Bichette probably in late January, early February. That's kind of how the bigger free agents are going to go. We finally are starting to see the clearing of the logjam of the mid-tier guys with Danny Jansen last night. And then today we get Jorge Polanco 2 for 20. I think we're going to see some of the international guys go around Christmas, but before New Year's for sure. Let's see here. It's true. Yes, it is, John, that the Mets and Padres are talking a big trade. Absolutely. It came from Jason161 River. Do you know the details of the offer? As far as I know there were talks anyway. The talks around the deal anyway were about Pivetta, Laureano, and of course Miller going to the Mets in exchange for some combination of young pitching. But it sounds like two players are completely off limits from young pitching position player side. Bengy, the outfielder, their top outfield prospect. Not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right anyway, but either way, their top outfield prospect is pretty much considered untouchable in those trade discussions. As is, I believe Nolan McLean is the other one that's untouchable. That leaves guys like Jonah Tong being the headliner of this deal, and some of the guys that no longer have a pathway to playing time at the major leagues. Luis Angel Acuna could be names that you could see thrown in there as well. But it sounds like the Padres are wanting at least two controllable starting pitchers that they're very comfortable with making it to the big leagues. Tong obviously would go into their rotation, I believe, on opening day. They're trading Pivetta in this deal, so I would think they're going to want to sign somebody in free agency if they did include Pivetta in this deal to the Mets. So we'll see what they do out there in San Diego. Going to be an interesting offseason for them. The package that they gave up to acquire Mason Miller, I don't think it's going to be quite the package they get to bring or to trade him away. I think they took a stab at it, and ultimately it didn't work. We've seen the Padres get into and out of really big situations in the past. You've seen me talk about this many times with the Padres. Great job by A.J. Preller pushing the buttons to try to go in when he has a chance and then taking his chips off the table when it's time to do so. He's done that time and time again. Juan Soto, the Uptons, Craig Kimbrell, Matt Kemp, and on the list goes. He just continues to refresh that roster and doesn't let it really stagnate. So he's got some really big contracts on the books now, though. He's trying to figure out a way to offload the deal of Cronenworth. He's not going to find a taker for Bogarts, but he's kind of saddled with some big money options. So if he's trying to improve his rotation, going about it this way, by trading a guy like Pivetta, who's off a really nice year, short-term contract left for him, Mason Miller, who has incredible value but is a high-leverage reliever when you have several different arms in the bullpen that could give you similar production, or at least give you very high-quality bullpen innings, take that valuable piece and give yourself some long-term starter options like a Jonah Tong. I'm really high on him. I think he could be a great ace in somebody's rotation very soon. But it's going to take some time. He's not going to do it on day one. That's why I'm advocating for the Mets going into free agency and adding two high-quality starters. My guys that I'd like to see them go after, Framber Valdez as the one. Michael King would be a great number two there. But I think they're ultimately going to end up going a little bit cheaper here, like a trade for Nick Pivetta would make some sense and kind of fit the typical David Stearns route where he doesn't want to spend big money on a free agent starter. Let's keep it going here. Willard, welcome back. Astros need to get an ace pitcher and outfielder who can hit. Well, you had one last year in Framber Valdez, and oh, by the way, you had one of those as well before you decided to trade him in Kyle Tucker. Now, there was no way you were going to be able to keep Kyle Tucker. I get the wisdom of making the move. Would have made the move myself if I was in the front office of the Houston Astros because you got incredible value back. That being said, they are looking to offload a little bit of salary here in Christian Walker. At least that's what the headlines are if you believe those. But for me, this is a team that does need to continue to try to replenish that farm system again and again and again via moves like the one they did for Kyle Tucker. I think that's really going to be valuable for them. They have lots of good young arms that are already at the major league level, but they're kind of tapped out on prospects. So they're going to have to, as this aging team kind of goes through its cycle here, they're going to have to replenish that system as they go along. They're going to have to thread a needle here. Not saying they can't do it. After all, they've done a great job the past, 10 years of doing that. I think they're just going to have to do it a little bit differently than what they've done in years past, and we'll see if they can succeed at doing it that way. Now, as far as an ace pitcher goes, I don't think they're going to be able to retain Framber Valdez. I think he's going to be able to get the money he's looking for elsewhere. Could they still ultimately pony up the money here? I think the contract for Framber Valdez is probably going to be in the range of 5 for 30, maybe a little bit more. But I think if that's the range for him, I think that was the price limit anyway for what the Astros were comfortable with last offseason, signing him to an extension. If the number ultimately comes in that range, maybe he goes back to Houston, so I wouldn't rule it out completely. But I do think it's a greater chance that he leaves and finds his way elsewhere. As far as a guy to replace him in that rotation, I doubt they go after a Justin Verlander. I'm sure they'll kick the tires and be like, hey, you interested? Verlander's going to be like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to try to find my way elsewhere. But I do think they'll try to add somebody on the cheap option, kind of a cheaper option. Maybe somebody who's trying to prove it on a one-year deal. Talked about Tyler Mahle a lot. He just fits the kind of that mold of a guy looking for a prove-it deal that has a high ceiling, but also has some availability questions, which is why he's available on a 1 or 2 year deal. But we'll see where the Astros decide to fill those holes. Roy, if the Yankees were in on Bellinger, why would they make Tucker an offer unless they're far away? Well, you continue to make offers to all these players. Until somebody says yes and takes your money and signs on the dotted line, you don't have that position filled. So if they can get Tucker and Bellinger just says, hey, I'd rather play elsewhere, if for some reason the Rangers right now find themselves with an extra $30 to $40 million that they can spend annually right now, Bellinger would be the ideal candidate for them to be able to bring in. Everybody's been talking about Luis Arraez for the Rangers. I'm beginning to wonder if the Rangers could do something a little bit scary on the offensive side of things by bringing in a Cody Bellinger. Rumors are they would prefer to spend it on a starting pitcher. I think they have a really good setup right now, and I think they could bring back some smaller, lower-cost options in that starting rotation. Heck, even Merrill Kelly I think would be a really good option for them, but is only going to cost you probably in the neighborhood of like $18 million a year. If you give him a 3-year deal, I think he signs on the dotted line right now, and then you're still left with another $20-plus million to give out. Not saying it's going to happen, but I'm just saying there's more teams than you think that are going to be in there for Bellinger because of the type of player he is. Speaking specifically of the Yankees, they don't have a Goldschmidt anymore over there at first base. They're going to have to figure out this thing one way or the other, and they're going to have to continue to make these offers until they finally get somebody to say yes on that big money item. So we'll see. Cubby, welcome in. Cubs sign which two of Framber, Ranger, Imai, King, Gallen, Fairbanks, Weaver, Stanek, Breggs, and Gino? Great question. I think I predicted Gallen. I'm trying to remember if I had Gallen going to the Cubs or if I had him go to the Giants. But I think out of those arms, I would say Zach Gallen would be the one that would be achievable for them. My preference for them to go after, King and Gallen to me would be kind of the 1-2 for me. Not saying that they'd be the number one pitcher in that rotation, but kind of what they're usually able to do contract-wise, that kind of fits the mold of what they're comfortable with. 4 years, 80, I think, is the limit of what they would be willing to do. If they went a little bit higher here, I could see Framber Valdez as a $30 million option, but I don't think they're going to spend that kind of money for that length as well. On the offensive side, I think they're holding out for Bregman. I think they would love to have him. The money is the question mark. I think the long-term contract will be there for Bregman. Will the average annual value? That is a bigger question. I think Gino is far more likely for them because I think Bregman's going to get such I think he's going to be able to get the contract he's looking for from a team he really wants to play for. We talked about it last year, how he really wanted to play for the Tigers. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition. Tigers are kind of cool on him this year, so he's going to have to sign elsewhere. I'm hoping he goes back to Boston. He was really good in the first half. Injuries kind of derailed the second half. We'll see if he goes back there this season. Eric, Cardinals will probably finish fourth or fifth place next season. Probably. They're kind of in a retool, rebuild mode. I would put them in that mix with the Reds, the Pirates, and the Cardinals, kind of all in that same group. Reds fans will tell you they're actually more of a contender this year. Pirates fans will tell you they're finally adding offense. I'll believe it when I see it. But for now, I kind of picture them more in that range as far as teams in that central. But we'll see. Andrew, when will JT sign back with the Phillies? Relatively soon, certainly before Christmas. Jansen did sign with the Rangers. Danny Jansen, yes. Let's see here. Got a whole bunch of comments that my screen just jumped there. Let's see here. Do you think Seattle could trade for Alec Boehm now since Polanco signed with the Mets? No, I don't see that happening. I know that's been a lot of rumors coming out primarily out of Philadelphia. There has been a couple of Seattle leaning sources anyway that would tell you their interest was real in him last year. But I think they're looking primarily at the trade market for Brendan Donovan right now and seeing if they can get that one across the finish line. And then as far as a Jorge Polanco type of a fill-in, I think they would probably go that route this year rather than an Alec Boehm. Boehm, I think, needs to stay in Philadelphia. They don't really have many ways of improving this roster over an Alec Boehm, so I would hold on to him if I'm Philadelphia. When do I think Fairbanks signs? I would guess probably after Christmas, but you never know with relievers, but we'll see. Yankees news, they did sign Ahmed Rosario. They're in on all the big fish like you would always expect, but kind of quiet on the big name free agent front for the Yankees. They did have their name connected to a couple of different trade rumors today. Nothing of substance to really relay on here at the moment. Andrew, do you think Seattle trades Donovan or Nolan or Wilson? I think they're going to trade Brendan Donovan would be the one I think they're going to try to trade because he has so much value. There was a couple of different articles about a month ago that kind of cited about an 80% chance that he's gone. I would have thought it would have been a far lower number, but if they're comfortable saying 80 already, that tells me there's a lot of smoke here that the Cardinals might be looking to reset. And with 2 years left of control, now's the time to really try to capitalize on his value. Because if you trade him at the deadline, you still get pretty good numbers. But at that point, you're not going to get the same teams that are going to be in there. It's not going to be the same bidding war. In the offseason, only 1 year left of control. You're not going to get anywhere near this package. At that point, you might get Celestin, and that's it. So that's why you make the move now if you're the Cardinals. Knowledge Untamed, welcome back. Mets never make the Gallen deal where they wait out the market and get a great starting pitcher who gives you similar numbers for way less. If they started thinking like that, they could be dangerous. Yes and no, but they have Steve Cohen money. To me, they need to stop, this, hemming and hawing, I guess is the best way to put it, and hand wringing, those kinds of things, and just throw the money down on the table and just realize you have Steve Cohen. Who cares if you're paying an extra $3 to $4 million annually for a player? If you're in the Pittsburgh Pirates, that would matter a lot. That probably takes out 2 or 3 different free agents that you could sign. For the Mets, that $3 million, even if it's taxed to the nth degree, Cohen can afford it. That's a rounding error for him. At this point, let's not worry too much about the bazillionaire's money and realize that he's a Mets fan and wants to see them win as well. Like I said, that's a rounding error for a guy that makes that kind of money. Money does count for a lot in this world. Don't get it twisted there. And yes, they got rich by being very fiscally conservative to a certain degree, but I think even he would agree at this point that as a fan of the Mets, as the owner of the Mets, it's his job to put the best team on the field, whether that be assembling the best front office to give them the best options to be able to sign in free agency, draft and develop the talent, those kinds of things, or putting the coaches, managers in the dugout to get this team where it needs to go, to being able to sign the check, being comfortable signing the check for all the millions he's going to have to spend to really build a championship caliber team. And he's done a really nice job as an owner so far. I really like owners that are willing to spend and spend and spend, and I think Cohen is that cut from that cloth. I hate hearing how owners are hand-wringing about an extra $5 or $6 million on a player like the Mets did originally when they were talking about Pete Alonso, but I think that was more of a philosophical thing from their front office. Cohen hired Stearns to be able to handle that type of that kind of a contract discussion, and they set their foot in the ground and said, hey, we aren't comfortable paying a first base DH option, 3 to 5 years down the road. We're comfortable giving you a short-term deal, but the days of a first baseman DH getting a 3 to 5 year deal from David Stearns, I think are long gone. So we'll see what happens here. But I think the Mets will certainly make the right decision as far as adding some starting pitching. The question, will it be the right starting pitchers as far as the true aces at the top of this rotation? That's where I really wonder. As far as them trying to get bargains on the market, they're not a team that really has to concern itself with bargains, but I think if they are able to wait out the market, wait until January, like all the other GMs tend to do, I think they will be able to get a couple of deals to your liking. So we'll see. But the Mets certainly have the money to go out there and do whatever they want to do. I'm Heel. I think the Mets need to sign Verlander. It makes sense for them. I do like the veteran presence. He's more of a number 3 to me in that rotation. I would still need 2 more starters if you made the addition of Verlander. Valdez to the Mets seems likely to me. That's the one we've been talking about for about a year now. I really liked him going there at the trade or in the winter meetings last year and at the trade deadline if the Astros had fallen out. Obviously, that didn't happen. And right now, I still think he's probably the best starting pitcher for them to go out there and be able to sign. Let's see here. A bunch of comments here. Murakami Cubs are also in on, absolutely. I think he could be an option over there at third base if they miss on Bregman. Bellinger is another name to watch for the Cubs. He did play for them. I think he would be comfortable going back to Chicago. But I think he's mainly looking for the contract number that he wants from another team. He wants that long-term security. This is the one time he's going to be able to get it, and he's looking to get that long-term deal, and I think he will be able to get it in this market. You want Imai in Philadelphia? I still would prefer Suarez, but Imai, I think if Suarez leaves, would probably be my top option after Suarez. Philly is third. Last place I want to see him. Already have to watch Schwarber in the World Series hero. Yeah. Why are the Mets so cheap? I would say they're not necessarily cheap, but they're stingier with their money than you'd expect with an owner with the deep pockets that Cohen has. And that starts at the top with David Stearns. The reason Cohen hired him is so he doesn't have to go out there and spend gobs and gobs of money for no reason. If he can build a bullpen on a shoestring budget, then by all means go out there and build a bullpen on a shoestring budget. But if it doesn't work, you better believe Cohen's going to spend the money to correct the issue. I think Stearns has got to loosen up the purse strings just a little bit here and be a little bit more flexible on the money he's willing to spend. Because even on a player like Pete Alonso, a player like Brennan Nimmo, and others who have now departed the Mets, these are players that still would be positive players for the New York Mets, winning players for them. Now, obviously, Stearns values defense, which is why he made the move for Simeon and let go of Nimmo. He doesn't believe in paying an aging first base DH option, which is why he let go of Pete Alonso. But you better have a plan to solve those holes because you had answers for those issues. You let those answers leave, you better have an answer to be able to solve the issue because if those issues crop up during the season, you better believe the fan base and ownership is going to have something to say about it, David Stearns. So we'll see what the Mets ultimately decide to bring in. They do bring in Jorge Polanco to get things rolling, but that doesn't move the needle for me. I don't necessarily like the money that's committed there. Basically took a very much lower cost version of what I'm sure they were offering to Pete Alonso, so I guess you could say they save a little bit of money there. There's been rumbling about them Polanco being a platoon over there at first base next year. We shall see how this rest of this free agency kind of unravels here, because Polanco can literally play all over the diamond. I don't think they've really chosen a spot for him to play next year already. I think they're going to see how the rest of this offseason pans out and see where they can ultimately utilize his bat in that lineup, fresh off of a very good year for the Seattle Mariners. All right, yeah, but for the Mets, it's about fit over money for me. True. With Stearns there, I think fit has a lot more of an influence there as well. They shouldn't have let two elite players who fit go. I mean, Nimmo did fit, but I will say the Mets had their issues last year. They were not a perfect team, but the reason they were not a perfect team was that starting pitching. We knew that going into the offseason last year. They didn't really address it in any meaningful way. They got some really lucky performances out of some really nice young players for them, but you can't count on that for a 162-game season for guys who are essentially rookies going into this coming year. They need proven arms, and I think they would be making a mistake if they don't add guys like Valdez at the top of that rotation. Why are the Cubs so cheap? We are actually worth more. I would say the ownership group there. I think they have their eyes set elsewhere with their funds, and they don't necessarily want to pay at the top of the market when they don't necessarily have to. The return on investment is what you're going to hear a lot from a lot of these owners. They don't want to say it publicly because it always aggravates fan bases, but privately behind closed doors, this is what they're saying to each other. Hey, I bought this team for $250 million. We'll just throw a number out there. It's now worth $550 million. But I don't have that money in my pocket yet. So I'm going to try to pocket as much money along the way as I can and kind of build my brand with what it's already here and just try to build off of that. The correct way to do that, if you're a fan of these teams or the owner of these teams in this case, would be to build on that brand by winning, by going out there and being in the news cycle. That's part of why Jerry Jones, for all the hate that he gets, he still has the most valuable franchise in the world in the Dallas Cowboys because he continues to have them in the news. Do I want my owner necessarily acting that way, or do I want him spending that way just to keep us in the news? No, I want him to go out there and try to do it for the right reason of winning, getting a difference maker on the field that's going to help win those games. So it's in terms of baseball here. If we're looking at the Cubs, the Ricketts, trying to remember, is it the Ricketts family? For some reason, Ricketts is sticking in my head. But anyway, the owner of their team, I believe, has an English Premier League club that he also is an owner of as well. But for the Cubs, if they continue to rise in value, they're going to always do so. They're the Cubs. They're the iconic franchise. Even if they're terrible, they're still going to rise in value every single year. But he wants to make money off of this while he's there as well. And I think he's not willing to spend on long-term deals if he doesn't have to. If he can still get by with a couple of guys who give you similar production, but might not come through in the clutch, or might have issues with walks, or might have issues with the long ball. There's always going to be some flaw in the players that they usually go after because they're not willing to pay at the top of the market. If these guys were flawless, they would be at the top of the market. I'm not saying the Cubs are going to go with guys that are making $5 million for their rotation, but I also don't think they're going to be going for guys that are making $30 million a year for 7 years. The Corbin Burnes contract, I don't think the Cubs would ever do that right now. But we'll see what happens. I think the Cubs certainly have money that they can spend this offseason. Tucker's likely leaving in free agency, in my opinion. I would take that money and add starting pitching. Last winter meetings, they said, no, we don't need starting pitching. We need to go ahead and add more pieces to this lineup. To me, their lineup was just fine. They didn't need to move on from pieces that they did. They didn't need to trade Bellinger. They didn't need to trade for Kyle Tucker. They didn't need to to lose out on Paredes and Smith. They didn't need to do those things. To me, they needed to add starting pitching. And what was their issue last year? Steele goes down due to injury. They get some really nice performances out of Imanaga, excuse me, and Matthew Boyd as well. But they need to get some better pitchers. You look at the starting pitchers that they've signed over the years: Jamison Tyone, Matthew Boyd. These are guys on lower cost deals: 4 for 60, 2 for 20. I think if they're really looking to kind of push the envelope and show they're committed to winning, they're going to have to go after these $30 million starting pitchers. But I think the ownership, that front office, is not comfortable with that. Best case scenario you can hope for is a 4 for 80 guy like a Michael King or a Zach Gallen. And I think that's basically how things are going to go for the Chicago Cubs. Let's see. So you definitely can't stand Ricketts owns third biggest franchise, freaking Cubs, and won't go over the first threshold. Like I said, owners want to win or want to keep making their money. They view these teams as a business, a vessel for them to make money. And like I said, their ownership, I believe, has a stake or completely owns one of the English Premier League teams as well. But as far as you look at other teams and other areas of sports, the Dallas Mavericks were bought by a team. By a group of people anyway who view the Mavericks more as a commodity, a business, more than what Mark Cuban did. Mark Cuban got most of his money in the tech sector, was really a fan of the Dallas Mavericks and going to games and said, hey, why is nobody here? And he thought he could make it better. And he was a fan of the team and he made it work. For all Mark Cuban's flaws, he certainly did everything he could to try to make the Mavericks a game that you could go to. Give them the best arena in the world. Give the players the best amenities. Take them from having to be stuck at a hotel 45 miles away from the arena. How about we put them right across the street and give them all the comfort in the world? That's one thing Mark Cuban has done and continues to do right. I would like to see owners kind of be more of that cut of the cloth. The cut of the jib, as Brian Kenny likes to say on MLB Network. I like the cut of Mark Cuban's jib when how he handles people, how he handles his businesses, and how he handles the team. Meanwhile, you look at the Sands group that took over the Mavericks, they view it like a return on the investment. I'm sure that the Ricketts group there and several other owners around Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, view these things as a commodity. And for those of us who are fans of these teams, we can't understand that mindset. It's not our team that we own that we're cutting the checks for. If it was our team, I think we would all be a lot more like Mark Cuban than any of us think we would be. he does a great job of being able to handle what are he does a great job the way he handles his business with the Mavericks until he sold the team. Of course, he still owns what a 24% stake in the team, but he's still around and you can still see the effects of Mark Cuban there even today. So I think the effects that he brought to the Dallas Mavericks, to the Dallas community, are longer lasting than any of the business developments that we're going to see from Sands. But we'll see. Let's try to catch up on a few more of these comments here. Becker, welcome in. First time I think I've seen you in the chat here. Where does Bellinger sign? To begin the offseason, my thought was certainly going back to the Yankees. Now with Pete Alonso going to a surprise team like the Orioles, I think that really does open up the New York Mets and a couple of other spots. If Tucker decides not to go to Toronto, I think there's an outside chance he could go there. Giants have money they're looking to spend. I'm not sure how serious their pursuit of him has been. Nationals have all kinds of money they're looking to spend this offseason. They're going to get somebody who's going to take their money. I doubt it's Bellinger, but as far as my pick right now, I'm still going to lean towards the Yankees is where he ultimately goes back to. I think the Mets are going to find their solutions elsewhere in free agency. Specifically, they still have that rotation to fix. For the Yankees, I think they've got irons in a lot of different fires. They still need to resolve their relief pitching. To me, they're going to. To me, they're probably going to lose Luke Weaver in free agency. They need to replace that role in their bullpen. Devin Williams is gone. They need to replace that role in their bullpen as well. Bednar's going to be their closer. They got Doval still there, but to me, they need more depth options. Mark Leiter just signed with the A's. They got some work to do in that bullpen. But I would say that the Yankees are likely, or the most likely anyway, for Bellinger. Why did David not like Pete? Let me see. That's what it was. I missed the conversation here. Does Soto regret the Mets deal now, and who is the leader in the clubhouse? I don't think he regrets the Mets deal. I think he's very happy with that deal come hell or high water. As far as regretting being on the Mets, that could be a different thing. I don't think he does, though. I think the Mets are still, right where they were last year at this time. I still think they're a really good chance to, get to the series and win it. The Dodgers, of course, are the evil Empire team, but I still think the Mets are right there and could continue to try to push the envelope as they should. They're a winning ball club right now. They can't just sit idly by and let these young guys go in the rotation and feed them to the Wolves in October. They're bounced in the first round, and then we're sitting here a year later with a lockout looming and wondering what are they going to do in their rotation. Sure, it'd be nice to have a year of development for those guys, but this is a team that's ready to win, and they need to add starting pitching. But as far as who's the leader in the clubhouse, I think it's kind of a mixture of dudes in the New York Mets organization with Nimmo now gone. I would guess it's going to lean more heavily on Soto since he's making the big bucks. But I think Polanco is going to serve a really nice role for them now that he's signed to a deal. He's a good veteran leader on that ball club now. But I think there's a couple other players, Francisco Lindor, they're going to have to take a little bit more of a leadership role than they have in years past. And we'll see about Jeff McNeil if he's still even on this roster. But those are the guys I think they're going to be leaning on the most because those are the guys that are making the money. There'll be a couple of veterans that have been around the team for years and years and years that they'll lean on as well. But by and large, they're going to look to the players that are making the money for that leadership. And do those guys have the leadership ability? Is another question. Justin Turner is done as a player, but I want the Cubs to make him a bench coach. He helps the locker room grow so much. I would love that kind of a player. Reminds me a lot of Mike Napoli back in the day. He was a really good locker room clubhouse guy. He's a pretty good coach as well. Bobby Wilson, you guys probably never heard of him, but a catcher that kind of bounced around the league with the Angels, the Rays, the Rangers. He was the Rangers catching coach for the last several years now. He has been let go by the Texas Rangers to pursue other opportunities. I would not be surprised. I'm not sure if he actually landed somewhere, but the Giants, other clubs, his knowledge of how to catch, how to frame pitches, how to set up before the pitch, how to call a game was invaluable. Players like that, players like Justin Turner, players like Mike Napoli deserve to stick around the game. You look at Stephen Vogt and the success he's had with the Guardians so far, same kind of thing. The way he's able to connect with people is more important than just the numbers, the X's and O's, those kinds of things. All right. But the Mets, if the Mets have locker room issues, sign Justin Turner. Guy is going to be an amazing manager soon. He develops and always teaching guys. I think he'd be a good option, but we shall see. Why did David not like Pete? I'm not sure who you're referring to as far as David. Just drawing a blank on that one. I'm guessing Pete Alonso, but I'm not sure who you're referring to as far as David. Where does Bellinger sign? I still think he goes to the Yankees. not if the Chicago fans boycott. They're not going to boycott. I mean, it's a huge city. You're going to get all kinds of revenue from attendance. Fans coming from all the way from Texas to watch the Chicago Cubs. That's going to happen a lot. The Cubs are a national brand, an international brand. They're going to do just fine on attendance. They're going to do just fine on apparel sales and jerseys and all that kind of stuff. Now, as far as like local revenue for TV sale or television, those kinds of things, you could impact them a little bit there. But there's no true boycott of any team that we're going to see. The closest we've seen in recent memory, the closest we've ever really seen, in my opinion, has come to the Dallas Mavericks after they traded Luka Doncic. Just the abject rejection of the team until they finally got rid of Nico Harrison, and now the team is looking great. I mean, Cooper Flagg looks like the rookie of the year. I mean, you're looking at Anthony Davis playing great right now, even though he's probably going to be traded by the deadline. I think his value has certainly gone up since he's returned from injury. Can he stay healthy until the trade deadline is another question. If he keeps playing at this level and putting up numbers like this and staying healthy, Mavericks are going to get a pretty nice package back for him. Is it enough to justify what they gave up in Luka Doncic for him, Max Christie, and a first? Hell no. But they could certainly get a nice return there. But the Mavericks were the team before they got rid of Nico that was rejected by their fan base, was quote unquote boycotted, protested against. Chants in the stadium and constantly firing their GM. With 3 seconds left in the game, the arena is usually quiet, so the home team can make their free throws. Echoing down from the rafters all around the stadium, they're talking about firing Nico, and really affected the players. Even their top rookie Cooper Flagg, his mom had to come out on Twitter and basically defend Cooper Flagg and the team from these chants and having to deal with them. Not necessarily that it was resentful towards the fan base, that they weren't justified in saying these things, but that it really wasn't fair to the team that they were having to go through this. And she was right. They finally moved on. Nico Harrison's gone. Team is no longer boycotted. Chicago, you're an even bigger market. That's not going to happen with that market there. Let's see here. Cubs would sign starting pitcher Imai to big money if they can. That's about it. I would agree there. They have been spending money internationally. You look at Suzuki and others. They've had a nice group of international pieces come in over the years. He could be the next one. I think that would be a really nice signing for them. But I think the more likely would be guys in that 4 for 20 range. If Imai is in that range, absolutely, but I don't think he's going to be. I think he's going to get a bigger deal. I think he's going to cost more money. Gallen, I think, probably takes a short-term high AAV deal if he can, so he can kind of have a really nice platform year. But I think the more likely option is no team's going to give him that type of money that he's going to be looking for on a short-term deal. So he's going to have to take it in a long-term deal in that $20 million range for 3-4 years. I don't think he gets a 5th year. King, same kind of boat. He's a really good pitcher, but to me he's a number 2. Gallen has the ability to be a 1 and has shown it in years past. King can be a number 1 at times, but the majority of his career he's going to be a 2. Do the Phillies add a right-handed bullpen piece? I think they're probably going to add a couple of different bullpen pieces between now and the start of spring training. Dallas ownership makes more money with Luka in LA via shared revenue. Well, I'll put it this way. As a fan of the Dallas Mavericks, I don't give a darn how much the Mavericks, ownership group is making because of revenue sharing or anything along those lines. But I will say that Luka Doncic was the heartbeat of that team, was the heartbeat after Dirk Nowitzki left, and one of the few sports markets that still cared about loyalty. I know it's something we shouldn't have thought as Dallas fans, but we were the rare team that cared about loyalty, that cared about chemistry. That wasn't the case in the beginning of the Mark Cuban era. Every player on the team was gone every couple of years, but the one constant was Dirk Nowitzki, and he was our guy. We thought we had that guy next with Luka Doncic. It looked like he was going to be a stalwart in that lineup. And, fair or not, Dallas fans thought they had another great 20 years. You look at the Green Bay Packers with their luck on starting quarterbacks. You go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, now Jordan Love. Look how lucky they are to have that type of continuity, the loyalty in that quarterback room. Now, of course, at the end of their career, we've seen Rodgers and Favre move off. We'll probably see the same with Love. But by and large, those are Packers guys and will always be Packers guys. All right, let's try to go through a few more of these comments, finish up a few more of these transactions, and then kind of have some fun for the last couple minutes of the live here. Tracy, welcome in. Your thoughts on Nico Horner? Will Warren, who says no? Yankees probably say no. I'd rather keep Will Warren than go after Nico Horner. Nico moves to shortstop and solves a huge problem. I mean, Volpe's still there. What do you do with Volpe then? You'd still have a problem there. Do you send him in to the Cubs trade? I would still rather have Will Warren. Now, does he help out the Chicago Cubs? Absolutely. Could you frame the deal around Will Warren in exchange for something else? I believe so, but I don't think there's a real fit there. I think Will Warren probably is going to start the season with the New York Yankees, barring something unforeseen. I can't understand making nearly $6 billion yearly and spending $100 million on a team. No, I would pocket the $1 billion, but the other five would go back to the team. We say that now as fans of the team. That's all I'm going to say. All right, David Stearns. Okay, David Stearns, you meant to say. So let me go back up to your comment here, see if it makes more sense. Why did David not like Pete? I don't think it had anything to do with whether or not he liked him or not. I think the reason why he let him go was strictly, just looking at it on paper. I don't even know who the players are. Player A, first base DH. How long am I going to give him on a contract when he's over 30 years old? I'm not going to give him a 5-year deal. I'm comfortable giving him a 2 or 3-year deal, no matter how good he is. Player B plays a premium position, shortstop, center field, right field, power bat, something along those lines. And in his late 20s, I'm going to give that guy a much longer term deal at a higher average annual value. Looking at it on paper, not including names, that would be kind of how I would break it down if I was in that same front office. David Stearns, I think, adheres to that religiously. He's not going to stray from that calculus. That's why they bring in Juan Soto. That's why they let Pete Alonso go. That's why they bring in Jorge Polanco on a 2-year deal to kind of be that Swiss Army knife for that offense, for that infield. And we'll see how successful this version of the Mets is going to be. I think this version is going to be a little bit better defensively. I'll give them that. But right now, the offense is still significantly worse. No Nimmo. You substitute for worse offense in Simeon. You're not going to have McNeil out there at second base anymore. His offense was still a little bit better than Simeon. We'll see if they can get a nice rebound year for him, but doubtful. We've seen over the years, second basemen after they get to 35, those guys do not bounce back usually. So could be rough on the offensive side. You also look at the player in Pete Alonso. They let go to the Baltimore Orioles. They have holes to fill. Polanco is a nice step forward to at least continue that, defensive versatility, production, those kinds of things. But now you need a difference maker. Juan Soto can't be your only difference maker in that lineup along with Francisco Lindor. You need one more guy. I think they will get that one guy. I'm going to reserve judgment for another day or so on the Mets. Then we're going to get into a little bit more of a Mets-centric video about what their philosophy has been this offseason, letting Edwin Diaz go, going on the trade market, possibly pursuing a Mason Miller, Nick Pivetta, Ramon Laureano to kind of help out in that outfield mix. Bringing in Polanco. Do they go after Murakami next? Do they bring in Bellinger, Tucker? What do they do in that starting rotation? That's the biggest need on this roster, and they have yet to address any of that outside of maybe going after Nick Pivetta in that trade with the Padres. They need a number 1. They need a number 2. They're talking about trading Peterson. If they do, they need a number 3. If they trade away Tong in that deal with the New York Mets, or with the San Diego Padres, they're probably going to need a number 4 starter as well. Lots to do. Plenty of time to do it. They're going to have their work cut out for them, though. They kind of alienated their fan base by getting rid of their fan favorites. They're going to have to justify it by winning on the field next season. I don't think by the time we get to spring training that all the Mets fans are going to say, hey, this offseason, rousing success, letting go of Pete, letting go of Edwin Diaz, trading away Brennan Nimmo and bringing in Marcus Semien, and say they bring in Kyle Tucker, etc. I don't think there's going to be 100% of Mets fans who are like, yeah, we're going to win the series this year. That's not going to happen. So they're going to have to prove it on the field by winning actual games. All right. Try to catch up on these last few comments. Vita for Life, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us once again. Have you done a Giants Marte trade? I have not yet. I can do that one next. Welcome in, Street. Appreciate you joining us. Andrew, what happens if the Phillies get the third baseman from Japan? That would be a really good signing for them. They don't have the money to really do it, though. I would be stunned. But if they get him, I think it would be a nice upgrade over there at third base. But what do they do with Alec Boehm? Doesn't necessarily have huge value. What can you get for him? Do you go back to the Mariners and just say, we'll give him to you for a bag of potato chips so we can save on our payroll situation? What do they do with Nick Castellanos? All those kinds of things are still things that the Phillies are going to have to figure out. But I would say as far as the Phillies' chances of landing Murakami, I would like let's try to do this in somewhat of an order. Yankees, Mets, 1A, 1B. I would say Akamoto's more likely for the Cubs, but I think he's at least in the discussion. Boston, if they miss out on Bregman, I think he could be an option there. Texas, I doubt, but they could use a third baseman after their struggles with Josh Young last year. Um, Detroit, maybe, but I still doubt they're really going to go after a big ticket like that outside of what they've already done. After their hesitation about Bregman, I'm not sure how um, zealous they're going to be in their pursuit of Murakami. But I'd probably put all those teams ahead of Philadelphia. Could he still end up there? Sure, we've seen crazier things in sports, but I still think he ends up in one of the New York teams. I would probably put it at 75% he ends up in one of the two New York teams, 25% the field. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and do that trade, Giants and the Diamondbacks. So Diamondbacks with Marte, his value 69.1. We're going to the Giants. What could that type of a deal look like? I think it'd be a really good get for them, but it's going to cost them a pretty penny here. But they're looking to win. Can't count them out here. Bryce Eldridge, I think, would be probably the starting point here of the trade. I think they'd have to go after somebody in free agency at first base or via trade. I think there would be a question about whether they go after Christian Walker from the Houston Astros, try to take that money off of them. That would be an interesting get. But let's say you start there with Eldridge. You're already, 19 away now? You don't have to give up any of these other top prospects here, but I think you'd probably have to get into this range. Johnny Level. But they're looking for starting pitching back. I think they'd probably skip on Johnny Level. So maybe a Tidwell as kind of the second piece here. Bresnahan. Let's do Bresnahan. Now you're about 8 away. Juan Sanchez, maybe? Let's say you do Tidwell to the Diamondbacks. You're at 72. I think your value's pretty much there. And if you go back to the Diamondbacks, what could they give you that doesn't have a whole lot of value that you could utilize? Matt Mervis is here. Interesting. Let's see here. Let's go to the major side of things first. AJ Puck would be an interesting piece. Let's say they do that. They send Puck since he's got 1 year left. And then you help out your bullpen, your second base. You get your first baseman of the future there with the Diamondbacks. They thought they had that as well with another player. I believe it was Locklear that they got in the deal with the Mariners, I want to say. But that would be an interesting way for them to get Ketel Marte. Would I do this trade if I'm the Diamondbacks? If my target is starting pitching, I'm not sure I'd be satisfied with this offer. But I think that would probably be the best Giants offer that they could make. Tracy, Wells, Dominguez, Hess, LaGrange for Joe Ryan and Jeffers. That's a pretty compelling offer there. I would not trade Wells or Dominguez if I'm the Yankees. Those two, I think, are guys that I need to have on this roster. As far as Joe Ryan helping them out and Jeffers, absolutely. LaGrange, I think, would be a nice fit for the Twins. Hess, possibly. Let's go ahead and look at kind of what that trade would look like. Twins, Yankees. Twins sending Joe Ryan. And Jeffers, you're saying. So let's go ahead and look at that as well. Jeffers is a little further down here. There he is. 1 year left, 15 mil value. And you're saying for Wells, Dominguez. Wells is at 40. Dominguez at 24. Hess and LaGrange. LaGrange to the Twins and Hess. Alright, let's see what the trade looks like. It's a little lopsided. I don't like the return for the Twins. I think the value's too high for the Yankees to be comfortable with this either. I think both sides say no in this deal. If you were interested in this deal, though, if I'm the Yankees, I'd do something a little different. I would hold on to Wells. I would want Wells and Jeffers to be kind of my tandem behind the plate. I'm holding on to Dominguez. LaGrange would have to be in this deal. I'll leave Hess in there for now. We may tinker with that a little bit here. You have Ben Rice. He fits a little bit more with what the Yankees or what the Twins would want in return. Lombard would be a great fit going back to the Twins, but I think they would prefer to hold on to him. Let's say you traded Will Warren. 5 years of control of a starting pitcher, 28 value. There's number one. Schlitter would be an interesting point, but I think he proved himself in the postseason last year to where he's not going to go anywhere if I'm the Yankees. So you're at 43 currently with 3 starting pitchers going back the other way. You need about a $24 million value here. Chisholm, Dominguez, Kilby could be interesting. Let me look at the Yankees prospects really quick. Lombard, Kilby, 353 last year, 898 OPS, only had played in 18 games, no home runs, more walks than strikeouts, 16 stolen bases as a shortstop, which is something they're going to need. They've got a couple of guys they're trying out right now, but I don't think any of them are long-term options that will work out. So I'd rather have another bite at the apple. I don't think you're getting Spencer Jones in this deal. You could get Volpe back, I suppose, if they found another option at shortstop. But I think the Yankees, that's part of the reason why they're not going to give you Lombard. You could get a little crazy with it and say Ben Rice goes in this deal as well. Now, that's way more value. Why would we do that? Well, if you go back over to the Twins side of things, you could possibly convince Byron Buxton to waive his no trade, and that would round out their outfield mix as well. Now, to me, the Yankees probably have to throw in one other small piece. Say they throw in, I don't know, Lelane. 5 for 3. If I'm the Twins, do I do this trade? I'm giving up 1 year of Jeffers, 3 years of Buxton with a no trade, and 2 years of Joe Ryan. In return, I'm getting 6 years of control with LaGrange, with Hess, with Lelane. LaGrange is the one player that really makes sense out of that. The 2 big pieces that you're getting back, the aircraft carriers you're hoping on, are going to be Ben Rice, catcher, first base guy, and Will Warren. To me, this trade would hinge on your thoughts of LaGrange. If you think LaGrange can be a number 2 for you, I think this trade probably works. If you don't think he can be a 2, think he's more of a number 3, then I think you'd probably want a better piece in a trade for Joe Ryan than Ben Rice. Let's say you simplify the trade a little bit. You go just with Joe Ryan. You take out Ben Rice, you get up to 49 for 52. Take out Lelane. Let's go a little bit more expensive here. Let's say they go Cunningham in return. That's almost a dead match. I think you'd still need a little bit more, though. Take him out, put in... Let's say they put in Elmer Rodriguez Cruz. He's their number 3 prospect. AAA last year played 1 game. AA played 11 starts, a 2.64 ERA, 74 strikeouts, and 61 in the third. That could be a player you really hope on. LaGrange, what was his numbers ultimately? Did he succeed at AA last year? 16 games, 15 starts. And yes, OKC just lost, snapping their 16-game win streak. It'll be Spurs versus Knicks. Replay of the 99 NBA Finals for the NBA Cup, Year 3. All right, but looking at LaGrange, I mean, I really like these numbers here. 185 average, 129 whip, 073 ground out to fly out. And I like the innings. Last year he threw 120 innings total. That gives you 2 really nice pitchers to kind of centerpiece this trade in return for Joe Ryan. And both guys are already at AA. And oh, by the way, you're getting Will Warren out of this deal as well. And a lottery ticket. Now that I look at this trade, I think the Yankees might say no to this because of how much they're giving up. But I think this would be a trade that the Twins would say yes to. What could the Twins offer to kind of round out this deal to make the Yankees say yes as well? Let's look at the major side of things. Bright is actually on the Rangers right now. He just got signed. Topa, a bullpen piece. I don't think that moves the needle too much for the Yankees, but it could. Outman in the outfield does nothing. Sands with 3 years of control. Possible. I can't remember how he did last year, though. Could be one option. I think that's when you start losing the plot there at that point. I would guess maybe they could throw in one of these relievers. Say they put in Cole Sands to kind of round out this deal. This is a deal I could see the Yankees saying yes to. Or if you take out Hess and you take out Sands, if I'm the Twins, it looks like you're getting less value, but I really like all three of these pieces. I think out of these three pieces, I'd probably like Warren the least. I'm going to go ahead and validate it here and post it. And even though I think that the Yankees, on paper, according to this site, are getting the better end of the deal, I really like this return if I'm the Twins. I get three bites at the apple here and 5 years of control of Will Warren. And even when he hits free agency, he's going to be 32 years old. So even if he does get to free agency, at that point, he's not going to be getting a mega deal at that point. He's going to be getting a 3-4 year contract at best. And then you still have to, Taj Bradley you're hoping on. You get some chances at some bites at the apple with other young pitching until these guys are ready to go to the majors. I'd probably say one of those guys ends up in the majors in 27 if it's not locked out. But I really like this deal. Joe Ryan, I think, is a really nice starting pitcher. That's a really good deal. I would do that if I'm both sides. What do you guys think in the chat? Give us a thumbs up in the chat if you would do this trade if you're the Yankees. What do you guys give this trade? An A or a B? C, D? What do you guys think? Now we have a lot of Yankees fans in the chat pretty regularly. Let's hear from our Yankees fans. What do you guys think of the deal? Move my head out of the way so you guys can see it. John, let's see here. When will the Cashman sign another player? I would guess he just signed one today. I wouldn't rule out literally anything at any point. But as far as like a difference-making player, a player that you would care if they signed with your team or not the level of Ahmed Rosario, but like the Cody Bellinger level, I would guess probably middle of next week would probably be a realistic time frame for that. Appreciate the hearts there. Thank you for the like. Let's go ahead and do another trade, shall we? Kind of having some fun with this. I was kind of thinking about logging off. I was getting pretty tired there, but starting to have some fun with this trade simulator here. You guys let me know. What trade would you guys like to see us do next? Let me go over our headlines here and see if we can come up with one. We could do the Mets and Padres deal and just kind of show how that deal would work. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. The Padres... and the Mets. So what kind of value does Mason Miller have? He still has 4 years of control. 43 mil value. That's pretty hefty. You're looking Nick Pivetta, 20 mil value, 1 year of control. Doesn't matter to the Mets. They need starting pitching, period. And then, of course, Ramon Laureano. So we're going to go major side of things. He's around, what, $3 million value? Yeah, 3.9. So this is kind of the trade rumors that were out there today. Ayuk did quit on the 49ers. Kind of saw that coming. after he got that contract, honestly. The Mets, Jonah Tong has been the ask from the Padres since the beginning. You're not getting McLean, you're not getting Bangy, it sounds like. So you're probably looking possibly Sproat. I think Beatty, depending on your thoughts on what the Mets do at third base, if they bring in Murakami, now that they've signed Jorge Polanco, I think Beatty could be the guy out, or Vientos. I would probably want Brett Beatty out of that group there. Maybe convince the Mets to take on Cronenworth in that deal as well. And then you have a platoon over there at first base. McNeil, Cronenworth. Maybe you send McNeil out in this trade. You don't think Elmer could be part of that trade? You still think Wells? I don't think the Twins say yes without it. I don't think the Twins would want Wells in that deal. He's a nice piece, but I think they want starting pitching back for Joe Ryan. You want the D-backs in Boston trade? We could do that one next. Let's finish this one up here. We need to get up to 67. I think Jet Williams is transitioning to the outfield now, but he's kind of blocked in the infield. Outfield, I think he will be blocked when it's all said and done. He could be the other piece in this one. Vientos, 4 years left. A.J. Ewing is kind of the outfield piece. That would be an interesting secondary piece. I like that one if I'm the Padres. But I still need starting pitching more than anything else. Even if I include Ewing and Tong, I'd still need another 26. I think that's when you get into the conversation of Sproat. I don't think it. Maybe Peterson going back on a 1-year deal, but again, 1-year deal. Padres have shown a willingness to take those on, though. I think Sproat would probably have to be the guy. How close are you then? Then you're 3 away. Honestly, I think this deal is pretty close because Ramon Laureano is not a $4 million surplus player to me. He's a good player, but his value is a little inflated here. Pivetta with 1 year, I think, is slightly inflated off a really nice year. So I think this deal, 3 for 3, gets close. Is this what they gave up in the deal to acquire Mason Miller? No. Which is why they might hold off. If they do, if they want just a little more, just to kind of finish it off, maybe throw in a Boston Barrow or a Clifford in this deal. I'll throw Barrow in there currently and just kind of show you what that looks like. I'll post it. I'm not as confident in this one as I am the other one. If I'm the Yankees, it's going to hurt to give up Elmer, LaGrange, and Warren in that deal for Joe Ryan, but I would really like that deal. Wells actually hits well in mini. Well, I mean, as far as like Wells, the player, I think he's a good player. I'm not saying that he's not. I just know that the Twins are looking for starting pitching back in return for any of these deals that they're talking about. They want starting pitching. And sure, you're getting 2 starters. The 2 starters I would demand, though, from the Yankees would be LaGrange and Elmer. I mean, Warren has more value than both of those guys currently on paper, but if you're not including LaGrange and Elmer, we don't need to be talking any further beyond that deal. Those 2 would have to be in the deal in order for me to make it with the Yankees. And then if you're not comfortable with that Yankees, probably have to move on to somebody else. Cabrera, there's lots of other starting pitcher options. Imai on the free agency side of things. But that would be who I would hold out for if I'm the Twins. And if you come back to the table, I'm going to assume that they're okay being in the trade. Now, I still need more value, but those 2 players have to be in there. All right. Let's keep this thing going, shall we? You said Diamondbacks and Boston, Justin. Welcome back, by the way. Let's see here. Red Sox and the Diamondbacks. All right. Diamondbacks trade you Marte, 69.1. Remember, Diamondbacks are looking for starting pitching back in return. With the outfield that they have, of course, they could kind of equal a little bit more trade value in this by including one of their outfielders that they have. I don't think they include Tolley. I think he's pretty much as untouchable as can be with this team. I think your young starting pitcher that you can go for is Connolly early. So there's kind of your first starting pitcher back. We talked about the Rays the other day possibly setting Pipio and Baz in the deal to the Diamondbacks for Marte. So keep that in mind. You're probably going to have to beat out the Rays from the prospects they're giving up or pieces they're giving up for the in the rotation. So early's a nice piece, but you're going to need another starter to make this deal work. So who else could you include? Witherspoon probably would be the guy. Perellis as well. Let's go ahead and look at the Red Sox farmhands at the top. All right, Witherspoon. They have the number 3. He was the first round pick most recently. No numbers yet from the minor leagues. Here's early. Played in Boston this year. 4 starts, 2.33. So he's already established that he can handle the majors. But he's only thrown 4 games so far. So a good young pitcher going back to Arizona. Good option. Now the other one was Perellis, who's valued very similarly to Witherspoon. What does he look like? Been in the system for a while now. Struggled at AAA in 2 outings. Had 1 outing at AA this year, so I'm guessing he had a big injury. What did he do the year before? And he was coming out of the bullpen as well. I'm guessing just rehabbing from an injury. So pitched really well at AA before the injury in 24. This season, that's too much of a wild card to be the second piece, unless you really like the stuff and your scouts liked him. Valera, I think, was the other one we liked for a period of time last year, but 5.45 did not end the year well, obviously. The year before, 1.99 ERA, a little bit better, but still not enough to be the second piece. So probably Case and Witherspoon, the first rounder from last year, probably would have to be in this deal. So Witherspoon, early, Marte. You still need about another $28 million in value. You could do Ceddanne Rafaela with the contract status that he's got. Really valuable piece. Wilyer Abreu and Duran, those have been the kind of the conversation there in Boston for years. Which piece do they hold on to long term? Which piece do they trade? With this trade configuration, I think you hold on to Duran and you trade Abreu. How does that work in the outfield for the Diamondbacks? I have my questions. Rafaela, I think, would be the better player for them in center. And 7 years of control, speed guy, really fits with what their playing style is. I'm going to say they throw in Rafaela into this deal. Now you're like, wait, it's way too much value, and I agree with you. So the Diamondbacks are going to have to give something back. What is, trying to think out loud here, Thomas's value here? Alek Thomas, 3 years of control. This would be your Rafaela replacement. Not that you need one, but could be. Not bad. I like that option there. Who else do they have in that price range that you might like better? Saul Frank? Nah. I think Thomas would have to be the guy coming back, in my opinion. 77.5 to 75. 3 years of control on Thomas. 5 on Marte. Early 6 years. Witherspoon first round pick. Rafaela 7 years at a very nice number. Showed a lot of improvement last year. But he really doesn't have an everyday spot in the outfield. They're going to have to clear up the outfield glut at some point here. With Anthony, Abreu, Duran, Rafaela. And they have a couple other pieces as well. They cleared off one of those in Garcia, trading him to Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago. But I like this trade here for the Diamondbacks especially. Boston, I'm not sure if Thomas is a big enough piece here to make this worth giving up all 3 of those pieces. Just kind of depends on what your thoughts are on Rafaela long term. If his offense this year, his growth that he showed was real, or if it's just a really good year for a speed runner, which we've seen many, many times over the course of baseball history. Speed guy has a really great year offensively, then comes back to normal the following year. But I think he's certainly a better player than Alek Thomas, don't get me wrong. 7 years locked up as well at a cost-controlled number, speed, with the Diamondbacks, that really does play. So if I'm the GM of the Diamondbacks, I do this in a heartbeat. If I'm the GM of the Red Sox, my question would be if I'm giving up too much. Then you got to remember, there are going to be several other teams that view his contract very similarly as one of the most valuable contracts in the game. He's a difference maker type of a player. Change the outcome of a game with one swing of a bat. I would probably do this trade if I'm Boston. I might grit my teeth and do it with the second piece being Thomas. I might try to get a different piece, maybe a bullpen piece. Heck, maybe you keep Thomas in there and add an AJ Puck. We'll see. We'll validate the trade here, post it. Andrew, where does Bader sign? I think I predicted the Royals. I would still rather have done him than Lane Thomas if I'm the Royals front office. I wouldn't rule it out that he still could go to Kansas City, but I think he's probably going to land somewhere where he can get a 2-year deal with some more lucrative money than he's gotten in his career so far. I would guess probably in the range of 2 for 20 is what he ultimately gets. Several different teams could use a third or fourth outfielder, but you're not paying 10 plus million to a fourth outfielder. Pittsburgh's looking for offense. I think he'd be a fit there. Reds, to a certain extent, could utilize him all over the place in their outfield alignment. Rangers are looking for a right-handed hitting outfielder. He could fit the bill there, but at $10 million, I think they'd rather spend that money on a starting pitcher or a bigger bat, something along those lines, or even in their bullpen. Let's see here. Perhaps Cunningham instead of ERC. I just Cunningham. You have to include ERC to me in that deal. Jeffers has to go back with Ryan. You're going to have to pony up if you're putting Jeffers in that deal as well. They want at least 2 legitimate starting pitching prospects for Joe Ryan. And to me, Will Warren's a nice piece, but the prospects to me in that deal would be LaGrange and ERC that I would want. Third would be Will Warren. That's why I'm saying if I'm talking deal with the Yankees, those are the 2 players I'm holding out for if I'm the Twins. And if you're not comfortable giving them to me, I'm comfortable passing and going to another team that will give me 2 very nice pitching prospects. They still got some time to go here. They're AA guys that just started to prove themselves at that level, which usually indicates that they might have a chance to be something real at the major league level. That's why they are so valuable. That's why they're so valuable to the New York Yankees fan base. But at a certain point, you got to choose what's more valuable to you. George Lombard, Spencer Jones, that group, with Jason Dominguez, or would you rather have this group of young starting pitchers that you're cultivating here? You certainly have some contracts in your starting rotation. You don't really going to have a spot in that rotation for years to come. Of course, you still have Volpe at the major league level. There's different ways that you can structure this team going forward. And the Yankees can spend all kinds of money to solve any additional issues that they may have down the road for holes they may eventually have. But for me, if I'm trading Joe Ryan, the Twins, I need 2 really strong starting pitching prospects back in return. For instance, if we were looking at the Mets, Tong would be the ask for number 1. And then I'd probably be looking at one of the younger starting pitchers in that 15 range as well, plus additional assets. All right, Mark, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us. Tracy, Yanks really need a right-handed hitting catcher with JC as the backup. I would put, as far as the needs of the Yankees, I would say catcher is probably like 7th or 8th on this list for me. For me, they need to add at least probably 2, maybe 3 players to that offense. First base, 1 in the outfield, and maybe 1 more infielder as well. As far as the pitching goes, they said they're looking for a starter. That's another one, so that's 4 positions. I think they need to add at least 3 more relievers, and then they finally get to the catcher spot. I think their catching situation right now, as it's currently constructed, is okay. I think all of the other needs are far more important to them at this point. But I do get your point that Jeffers would be a nice improvement. I would love for them to get both of those guys, as long as you're giving up the prospects necessary to get them on your team. What about Texas? You trade Walcott and Rosario and Teodo Young to the Braves for Smith-Shawver and Riley. Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. I say no immediately. The reason being is because while I like Smith-Shawver, injuries, stuff do play a little bit of an issue there. Rosario does have the injury issues on the Texas side of the return as well. But for me, Walcott has superstar written all over him. And while I like Riley, and he'd be an immediate upgrade right now, I think Walcott could be every bit Riley is in about a year and a half, and then some. And I'm not giving up a player like that for anything right now. He's so close to the majors. It's not often you get a talent like that as high as the Rangers have gotten him. and get him to ultimately succeed at the big league level. And I think the Rangers are going to ride this one till the cows come home. I don't think he's going anywhere. Now, do I think they could do something big as far as on the trade market for Young, Rosario, Teodo? Teodo would be the one that I'd find a little harder to trade because I think he has a chance to be on the major league club this year with this team. I think he'd be a nice piece in that bullpen for them. But as far as Rosario coming back from Tommy John, former top 100 prospect, does he get back to that status? Young, former top 50 prospect, can he get back to that status as far as an offensive piece? Those are some question marks there. But I do think Texas would be open to it if they get the nice return that they're looking for. Jose, welcome in. The Japanese player signs this week coming up, and the others right after New Year's. I think there's a good chance of that happening as well. I do think we're going to see a flurry of activity before Christmas. We'll see another bunch of activity before New Year's, and then the rest of the guys will try to finish it out the rest of the way pretty quickly there once we get to January. I do think Bichette's going to take a little bit of time here, probably until late January, so be patient if you're trying to sign Bo Bichette. All right, just came back to the Rangers get someone or what happened. Nothing yet. Let me go ahead and double check on X just to see if anything happened this evening besides the Oklahoma City Thunder deciding to be human today. Let's see here. Frasso brought back the Mets, Padres, and Pirates are all interested in Luis Robert in that outfield mix. Pirates makes sense. Padres have had interest in years past. Same with the Mets. Nothing too groundbreaking there. This is the tweet from Katie Wu that I was looking for earlier. Mariners and Giants have emerged as frontrunners in potential trade for Brendan Donovan, according to multiple league sources, with the Cardinals looking to land multiple prospects in return. You guys can check out our video earlier referencing the Brendan Donovan sweepstakes. To me, I think the Mariners would be a great fit there. They're comfortable with Colt Young at second base for now, but if they can get an improvement like Brendan Donovan, I think they would do it in a heartbeat. 2 years left to control. Now's the time for the Cardinals to trade him, and I think it's overwhelmingly likely that they will trade him at this point. Industry experts have been expecting that one for a little bit of time now, so we shall see. Do the Phillies extend Luzardo before the season? I think there's a good chance of that. They're locked in, like I said, financially. Do they want to lock themselves in more? I'm not sure if Luzardo's the player they do it for in that case. I think they've got at least 1 or 2 more years until they're really kind of free themselves up with their salary structure right now. Until then, they're kind of stuck with what they've got. Could they, try to bring back Luzardo because of those reasons? Absolutely. But they may look for upgrades as well. Let's see here. Just try to check and see if anything else has happened. Nothing too crazy. Small trade between the Royals and Brewers, trading kind of from their outfield depth in Isaac Collins along with Nick Mears for a reliever, Angel Zerpa. Could be a nice addition there for the Brewers. Royals getting younger. Alrighty. There was all the trade talk there. Cardinals signing Dustin May. Had a tough year last year. There was the agreement with Rogers. We had that yesterday. And then Kenley Jansen, 1 year, 11. All right, let's try to roll through a couple of these headlines real quick. Let me double check, make sure nothing crazy happened. Wemby ultimately led the Spurs to win against the Thunder, 111 to 109. Let's go ahead and back over to our baseball page and see if anything is new there. No, okay. So the headlines. We talked about Glasnow, the trade talks with the Dodgers already. Check out the first comments in our video as well if you guys are just joining us. Talked a little bit about the trade possibilities there involving Skubal, how the Dodgers may be willing to part with Glasnow if they land a player like Skubal in return. Mark, you think Texas will re-sign Armstrong? Gosh, I hope so. They have the money to do it. I think they can still add another $30 to $40 million in payroll. I think Armstrong easily fits within that and whatever else they might want to do as well. I don't think they need to trim any more salary unless they find a really big opportunity out there. I don't think they're going to try to jettison more salary, at least right now. Now, as far as roster flexibility, that's a different concern when it comes to Jock Peterson. Can you find somebody to eat even a few $1 million that deal to get in the name of roster flexibility? We shall see. If a team were to sign Jock Peterson on the open market, how much do you guys think he would get? I don't think he would get a minor league invite with an invite to spring training. I think he would still get a guaranteed major league deal, but I don't think it'd be anything more than a couple million, maybe $3 million. If you could get somebody to trade, an A-ball shortstop who's over the age at that point and eat $3 million the Jock Peterson deal, basically you're just giving him away and saying, hey, save me $3 million and you get Jock Peterson. I think the Rangers would do something like that quite easily. But that's your rumors on the Dodgers. As far as the Mets, they did sign Jorge Polanco, 2 years, $40 million. He's going to play all over the diamond, but could share some time over there at first base after losing Pete Alonso. Check out our comments earlier in the video with that one as well. Royals continuing to address their team needs all over the place. This one I hadn't mentioned yet, that they are looking at C.J. Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, and Jarren Duran in trade talks. Those are all mighty expensive trade targets for them to go after. Would they all be improvements for the Royals? Absolutely. Do I think they ultimately get any one of these guys? No. I think Mackenzie Gore likely stays. Still remain pretty certain on that one. Abrams, I think, does get moved. I think he gets moved sometime relatively soon. Duran, I think the questions around Boston center on what do they have to give up for Marte. Are there any other trades that they're targeting that might cost them one of their outfielders in that mix that may not include Duran? Until that happens, I think he's going to stay there in Boston. Let's see here. I'm here. What's your hot take for this free agency, Michael? Hot take, good question. Nobody's talking about the Nationals. My hot take is they still land at least one big player, like Bo Bichette. So that's pretty hot to me. As far as something I haven't really discussed, I don't really like throwing stuff at the wall, but what's something that I could see happening that would be considered a hot take? Rangers getting Bellinger, I think there's like a 1% chance of that happening. Do I think that's going to be my take? No. Valdez to Texas, no. Dodgers getting Skubal, no. Padres trading Mason Miller, maybe. But I think that's a little too mainstream, I think, to be considered a hot take. I will say for the hot take is that the Yankees, I know Yankees fans are going to say, yeah, that's not a hot take, that's what we all expect. I'm going to say the Yankees miss on a couple of their top targets here. I'm going to say they miss once again on a Kyle Tucker. I'm going to say they settle on a Bellinger. They miss on Murakami again. They miss on their starting pitcher targets, and they have to go the trade route for a starting pitcher. That's not necessarily a hot take, but I think that's probably the one I can settle on right now and feel pretty comfortable with. As far as if you're kind of talking about for the Texas Rangers for a hot take, I would say Bellinger would be the hot take for me, or Luis Arraez, because I just don't think he's overly likely to go to Texas. I just think both of those players fit really well with the identity Texas is trying to create on offense right now. You also like Brad Keller, if he's a free agent for Texas, can use him as a swingman, possibly. There are some options on the free agent market that I do like, but I think the trade block has a lot of interesting names on it. If Texas wants to go after the Padres relievers, depends on if they keep Mason Miller or not. But if they keep Mason Miller, then I think the other pieces become expendable. If they don't keep Mason Miller, then I think they need to keep those extra pieces. So we'll see what happens there. But I do like some of the young guys that they have coming. Alstrom, I think, could break camp with them. I think Cole Winn needs to be in this bullpen this year. Mark Church deserves a chance to be in there at some point in the second half if he can perform like he did in 24. If he has a repeat of what he did in 25, he might not make it to the majors this season. Teodo could be up at the majors at some point as well. But as far as a hot take, I'd say one of those bats at that first base, second base, DH combination, I think will be the quote-unquote hot take for me outside of the one for the Yankees. What is a trade no one is thinking of? Brennan Lau to the Padres or to the Pirates. It's going to happen. But Nolan Arenado, nobody's talking about him anymore. He will be moved. A surprise name no one's talking about. Barrios. He's going to be traded, I believe, by the Toronto Blue Jays. I just think it's a matter of when. There are plenty of teams that could use some starting pitching. He's had his detractors, but he still is a good starting pitcher. I'm just curious where he could go. To me, he'd be a really good number 4 in somebody's rotation. When he's right, he can be a number 1. How often is he right? Very rarely, which is why to me he's a number 4 in somebody's rotation at this point. And you hope he pitches like a number 3 and has better control. If he has the control, has the command, and limits the home runs, he can be a really high-end number 2. And if he's able to do all those things and still get the strikeout numbers and limit the on-base percentage, all those kinds of things, then he can play up to a starter or to an ace level in a rotation. But by and large, I view him as number 4 in rotation, but nobody's really talking about that one as well. Tracy, you think the Yankees sign Imai? I think he'd be a good option for you. I think they're right there. I'd probably give it a 40% chance. Probably one of the favorites there for him. I'd say the Cubs make a lot of sense. The Mets make a lot of sense. Giants, the Padres, they're going to have some stiff competition for him. All right, appreciate you guys joining us. Let's go ahead and flex through these last couple of stories. We mentioned the Yankees re-signing Armand Rosario, 1 year, $2.5 million with incentives to platoon over there at third with McMahon. Tigers, they signed Kenley Jansen, 1 year, 11 with a club option for 27. And then, of course, the Mets and the trade talks with the Padres for Pivetta, Laureano, and Miller as well. Cardinals, we mentioned, did sign Dustin May today. Those are kind of your big storylines from the day. Just double check and see if anything else is new. Doesn't look like it. Still doesn't look like we have terms anyway from the relievers the Rangers signed last night. Hopefully we will have them for you on Sunday. Be sure to join us all week long around 9 o'clock as we'll break down the latest from the MLB Hot Stove season. And we'll be live late in the day for a couple of our international audience as well on a couple of those streams as well. So, whenever you're able to watch, however you're able to watch, just want to thank you for your support. The likes on the videos, hearts in the chat, thumbs up, whatever you guys do, even just responding in the chat or asking questions really does help us out. Want to thank you guys for interacting with us. Really does help us out here at the Upside. Follow us on Facebook as well, Upside Sports Network. Whenever we do go live, we'll post there. If for some reason your YouTube is not sending our notifications out, you get limited on the number of notifications you get from YouTube every single day. But we are going to be increasing the number of videos we do put out here relatively shortly. Been making some short content videos, 3 to 5 minute long videos, kind of keep you guys updated on what's happening around Major League Baseball, the fallout from it, kind of give you my thoughts on where the Mets stand, all those kinds of things. Those are videos that are coming relatively soon, so keep your eyes peeled for those coming in the next few days. Sunday, that'll be kind of a unique show for you guys. We're going to kind of have a not a hodgepodge, but kind of a just a generic sports talk kind of a show. We're going to talk a little baseball, but we're going to talk a lot about the NBA trade deadline, I'm sure, with the Anthony Davis, the Giannis stuff, the NBA Cup, all those kinds of things, the Thunder having their 16-game win streak snapped. We'll talk a little bit about the NFL playoffs, the Cowboys' chances, the Eagles. I know a lot of the nation cares about those two teams, but they're not nearly the best. We'll talk about Phillip Rivers and his debut with the Indianapolis Colts after being out of the league for 5 years. We'll probably talk a little bit about the Sunday night football game between the Vikings and Cowboys. We'll probably have our live in the early afternoon hours before the game for the Cowboys. Going to go over and watch the game with my dad since he is a Vikings fan. I am a Vikings fan as well and a Cowboys fan. I'm a fan of both teams, so I'm happy, however that game goes, I'm going to enjoy it for both sides. For the Vikings, I'm just hoping that McCarthy finally starts to show that he's a little bit more mature in the pocket and can handle things like a normal NFL quarterback. If he doesn't, I'm also happy about that for the Cowboys and their chances to make it to the postseason, but I'm also happy about it because then it gives clarity to the Vikings about their need to address quarterback in the draft next year if McCarthy doesn't work out these last few games. We'll also talk a little bit of NHL about how Quinn Hughes got traded to the Wild, Jari gets traded to the Oilers, and talk a little bit of baseball as well. Some of the bigger trades that we've seen, some of the bigger signings that we'll see, and some of the things we're looking for over the next month. What are some of the big ticket items that we could see coming off the board? But I want to say thank you guys for your support. Hit that like, subscribe. The hearts in the chat goes a long way to helping us. We'll see you guys again tomorrow afternoon. Stay safe out there, everybody.